In 1918, a regiment of black American soldiers was handed over to the French army like unwanted cargo, treated as if they were excess equipment instead of human beings. The U.S. military did not want them fighting beside white troops. These men were given the worst gear, denied proper recognition, and told openly and repeatedly that they would never measure up. Yet within months they became the most decorated American unit of the entire First World War. Their actions were so extraordinary, so undeniable, that their own country quietly tried to bury the story. This is the story of men who were told they were not good enough to fight for their own nation, men who proved every cynic and racist wrong, and men whose heroism threatened the foundations of American racism so deeply that their legacy was erased for nearly a century. When America entered World War I in 1917, more than 350,000 black men stepped forward. They enlisted voluntarily, they answered draft notices, and they arrived ready to fight for ideals they believed the nation was supposed to stand for. They came from southern farms, northern cities, crowded blocks in Harlem, and dusty towns across the Midwest. Many were the sons of sharecroppers, factory workers, preachers, and porters. They saw military service as a chance to claim dignity, to demand equality, to show that patriotism did not belong to a single race. But the U.S. military had already decided their fate. Jim Crow segregation carved lines through every corner of American life, and the Army was no different. Black soldiers were pushed into segregated units, placed under white officers who believed they were inferior, and were almost always denied combat roles. Most were assigned to labor battalions. They dug endless trenches in frigid mud, hauled ammunition boxes under artillery fire, and buried the bodies of white soldiers who were considered worthy of the glory of sacrifice. The message from the military establishment was blunt. Black men could serve, but they could not be soldiers. White commanders and military theorists genuinely believed that black troops lacked courage, discipline, or intelligence. They embraced racist pseudoscience that claimed black men would panic under pressure, flee during battle, or endanger nearby white units. Even when black regiments trained for combat, their rifles were often outdated, their equipment inferior, and their training overseen by officers who treated them with open contempt. In the eyes of the U.S. Army, they were tools to be used, not warriors to be trusted. One unit, however, refused to be written off. The 369th Infantry Regiment, originally formed as the 15th New York National Guard, was one of the few all-black combat regiments. They trained rigorously. They drilled harder than any unit around them. They studied tactics, practiced rifle marksmanship, and built team discipline. They were ready. But when they finally shipped out to France, the American Army once again pushed them aside. American commanders needed bodies on the battlefield, but not black bodies fighting next to white ones. Their solution was both cold and calculated. They handed the 369th over to the French. They literally transferred the entire regiment as if they were surplus stock. Their U.S. insignias were stripped away. Their gear was replaced with French helmets and lapel rifles. They were placed under French officers instead of American ones. The symbolism was painful and humiliating. These men had volunteered to fight for America, and America rejected them so thoroughly that they were not even permitted to wear their own nation's uniform. And the disrespect did not end there. The U.S. Army secretly distributed a document to French commanders titled Secret Information Concerning Black American Troops. It was not a strategic overview or battlefield briefing. It was a racist propaganda manuscript designed to poison the French against the very men fighting beside them. It warned French officers not to treat black soldiers with respect, not to shake their hands, not to speak casually with them, not to commend them publicly. The document claimed black Americans were inherently inferior, prone to violence, and a danger to white French women. It urged the French to enforce racial boundaries that mirrored Jim Crow. But France did not listen. The French army had long commanded colonial troops from Senegal, Morocco, and Algeria. They had watched North African regiments charge enemy lines with unmatched courage. They had fought beside Senegalese riflemen who held positions through impossible conditions. The French judged soldiers by courage, not complexion. So when the 369th arrived, wounded in pride but driven by determination, the French sent them exactly where they belonged, the front lines. The 369th was assigned to the Champagne-Marne sector, one of the deadliest regions of the Western Front. This was where trenches became mass graves, where artillery thundered without pause, where poison gas rolled silently through nighttime winds, and where men vanished into the mud as if swallowed by the earth. Most units rotated out every few weeks for rest. The 369th did not. They spent 191 consecutive days on the front lines, the longest continuous frontline service of any American unit in the entire war. During those months they never gave up a trench. They never lost a prisoner. They never surrendered ground. They endured everything the Germans threw at them: artillery, machine gun fire, bayonet charges, gas attacks, and they stood firm. These men fought with a determination that bordered on myth. They volunteered for the most dangerous patrols. They launched daring night raids behind enemy lines, capturing prisoners, gathering intelligence and sabotaging German positions. They held ground that other units had abandoned. Their courage was fueled not only by the desire to defeat Germany, but by something deeper: the knowledge that their families back home lived under Jim Crow, under the threat of lynching, under laws designed to strip them of rights. Every step they took in France was an act of defiance against the lies America had told about them. On May 15, 1918, two members of the 369th, Private Henry Johnson and Private Needham Roberts, were stationed at a remote outpost. The night was still, the kind of quiet that presses against the ears. Then grenades exploded around them. A German raiding party of roughly 24 soldiers had slipped through the shadows to capture prisoners. They expected easy targets. Instead they found Henry Johnson. Outnumbered 12-1, Johnson and Roberts fought with desperate intensity. They fired until their ammunition was gone. Roberts, severely wounded, kept handing grenades to Johnson. When Johnson's rifle jammed, he swung it like a club. When it broke, he drew his BOLO knife. He fought in total darkness, slashing, stabbing, refusing to be taken, refusing to let his comrade be dragged away. Johnson was shot, stabbed, struck by grenade fragments. By dawn he had 21 wounds. Yet he remained standing, surrounded by the bodies of German soldiers whose attack he had single-handedly stopped. Johnson and Roberts became international news. The French immediately awarded them the Croix de Guerre, France's highest military honor. They were the first Americans, of any race, to receive it in the war. The Germans had another reaction: fear. They began calling the 369th Die Schwarzen Teufel, the Black Devils. The name evolved into Hellfighters, the title that would define them forever. By the end of the war in November 1918, the entire 369th Infantry Regiment had earned the Croix de Guerre. 171 soldiers received individual medals. Their battlefield record surpassed every American unit. In France they were heroes, celebrated, respected, revered. When the Harlem Hellfighters returned to New York in February 1919, they marched victoriously up Fifth Avenue. Tens of thousands filled the streets. Black communities celebrated with tears, cheers, and unrestrained pride. For a moment, it felt as if the nation finally understood who these men were. But the moment did not last. The U.S. military refused to officially acknowledge their French awards. Most cities offered no parades, no ceremonies, no honors. Newspapers quietly removed their stories. History books erased them. Henry Johnson, whose bravery had shocked the world, was denied disability benefits. His wounds left him unable to work, and he died in poverty at age 32. This was not negligence. It was purposeful erasure. America had a problem. The ideology of black inferiority, the foundation of segregation, lynching, and Jim Crow, collapsed in the face of the Hellfighters' achievements. They had been the best. Not good. Not adequate. The best. So their legacy had to vanish. Then came the Red Summer of 1919, when white mobs across America targeted black veterans. A black man in uniform was seen as a threat, a symbol of equality. Dozens were beaten, tortured, and murdered. These men had tasted respect in France. They had walked streets where white citizens shook their hands without hesitation. Back home they were reminded that their service meant nothing. The secret racist documents sent to the French remained hidden for decades. The Hellfighters' story stayed buried until the 21st century. Not because it was forgotten but because it was dangerous. In 2015, almost a century after his heroic stand, Henry Johnson was finally awarded the Medal of Honor. But every soldier of the 369th was dead by then. Recognition came only when it was safe, when it posed no threat to the myths America told about itself. The Harlem Hellfighters fought two wars. One against Germany. The other against their own country's determination to erase them. They won the first. The second is still being fought. History tried to bury them. Our job is to resurrect them, to say their names, tell their story, and make sure the next generation knows what these men did, what they endured, and what was stolen from them. Because truth does not stop being truth simply because someone hides it. And these men, every one of them, were heroes.